Chapter 10. After lunch, we stopped by my old neighborhood. I wanted to find Popsicle Grandpa so I could take a picture with him. He must have been getting up there in age. He was already in his 70s when I last saw him. And you say he sold popsicles outside your school? Hanks asked. And he'd give popsicles for free if you told him what you learned that day. I nodded. He sure did. Hank shook his head in amazement. How'd the guy make any money? I shrugged as I turned the last corner, but Popsicle Grandpa wasn't there. He usually parked his tricycle with his icebox strapped to his back, right next to my old school. But now, there was only a man sitting on the ground selling knockoff American VCDs. Excuse me, I asked the new guy. Do you happen to know where the old grandpa selling popsicles went? You wouldn't find him selling popsicles no more. He shook his head. He had a bad fall last summer. Broke his hip. Oh no, is he okay? Can we visit him? Lai lives over there in the Yuan around the corner, number 512. One of the other families from 512 courtyard houses stepped out, and I rushed over to them, asking if they knew an elderly man who sold popsicles. Oh, yes, an older woman said. Mr. Pang. He lives right in here. I'll let him know you're here. He'll be thrilled to have a visitor. Hank and I waited in the courtyard for Mr. Pang while his neighbors went and got him. When he came out, Popsicle Grandpa was in a wheelchair. He had dove white hair and wrinkle lining his face, but he still had the same warm and inviting eyes, and they flashed recognition when he saw me. Yeah, yeah, do you still remember me? I asked, calling him the affectionate term for grandpa in Chinese. You used to give me popsicles when I was a kid, outside my school. This is my friend Hank. Sure, I remember you, Popsicle Grandpa beamed. You were the kid who always wanted a second popsicle, he chuckled. Oh, what a wonderful surprise. Come in, come in. Hank and I squeezed by his rusty old tricycle in his cramped living room and followed him into his tiny kitchen, where he put on a pot of tea. As Popsicle Grandpa waited for the tea to boil, he asked what I'd been up to. We live in Anaheim, California now, I told him. America, wow, what's that like? It's great, very different from here, lots of wide open spaces, I said. We have beautiful lakes and parks and the best ice cream. He laughed. Are you still going to school? Of course, yeah, yeah. Good, Popsicle Grandpa said. He handed us cups of tea and sat back in his wheelchair, blowing gently on his. School is very important. Never take it for granted. Oh, yeah, yeah, I said, wrapping my arms around him. Education is a gift. Always treasure it. I will, I promised. I sat back down and told Popsicle Grandpa about the proposition that had passed last year in California, threatening to take away my friend Lupe's education, and how luckily it had been overturned in the courts. Good, he said. I'm glad it got overturned. Tell me more about America. As I started telling him about Lupe, Jason, and the Weeklies, Hank smiled. Popsicle Grandpa listened. He was especially pleased to hear that I loved writing. Will you write me sometime and tell me everything you've learned? He looked down at his ailing lower body. I don't get to see many kids these days. Of course, I said. I turned to Hank and said in English. And we'll bring you around for dinner before we leave, won't we, Hank? Hank nodded. I'll cook him up some ribs. I'd like that, Popsicle Grandpa said. I'm sorry to say that my daughter doesn't visit me much, he sighed. Times are changing in China. Families aren't as close as they used to be. Mr. Pang smiled and touched my cheek with his wrinkled hand. I'm glad you came. Stay close with your family, little one. In the end, the only thing that matters is family. Hank and I thanked him for the tea and bid him goodbye. That was very nice, Hank